Thanks, Chris, and shout out to Oxy Skincare again for sponsoring this. I'm Nicole Lim. I came up with Queer Dating 101 last September. Not sure if I've learned a whole ton since then, but always excited to kind of get together as a community. And lucky enough to have Drew and Shelli today, who, if you attended Queer Dating 101 in January, were panelists on the Flirting 101 session, which was, I think, our most attended session in that series, and maybe one of our highest attended sessions for her. So also want to give a shout out to her, just kind of providing this community for us. And it's been a long time since I've seen everyone on Zoom in this context, and super excited. I have been throwing events with her since, well, pre-COVID seems like centuries ago, so pre-COVID as well. And always just excited to connect in whatever way we can. So I'm going to let Drew and Shelli introduce themselves. I've asked them to share their hype songs, which I would love if everyone in chat would share their hype songs too, of like, what's that song that you play to get pumped up either for a date or just the day. And mine is Lizzo Water Me. So who wants to go? Drew, why don't you start?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Drew Gregory. I'm a filmmaker and a writer for Autostraddle, where I write a mix of film and TV criticism and also a lot about dating. I'm trans, I'm a lesbian. Let's see, is there anything else that's relevant? Well, I'll say the my hype song, which is Cockiness by Rihanna.
Ooh. Okay. Not me not being able to top that. But
it's a good one.
So I'm Shelli Nicole. I am a writer, freelance, write a lot of places, but I'm also the culture editor over at Autostraddle. My focus is on Blackness, queerness, different spaces in TV and film, where the two of those collide for me. I also write a lot about film and TV over there, and sex and dating. I write this really cool article with Drew and Danny, this really cool column over there where we try out different dating apps. We've been doing it since COVID started, and I think we're on a little bit of a break right now from it. We have been putting in a lot of work for y'all, so just please, we need a break. But other than that, my favorite hype song, the thing is, like, when I'm getting ready for a date, I chill. I don't necessarily need to be like all over the place. So right now mine is Hot Honey by R.H.E. So I think it's A-R-I-C-H-I. So it's really like chill vibe, and that's it. And also anything by the internet, like Sid belongs to me in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, that's it.
Nice. Thanks, Shelli. Yeah, so we were just thinking, we're coming out of COVID, the post-COVID the post is in quotation marks, because just like we all went into COVID quarantine in different speeds and ways, we're emerging from it in different speeds and ways. So wanted to talk a little bit about that today. And it's a pretty free-ranging conversation. So if you have questions, again, feel free to drop them in chat. And I'm just curious, how much did you date during COVID versus pre-COVID? So Chris is going to drop into chat, but 1, less than pre-COVID, 2, same, or 3, more than pre-COVID. So did you kind of hibernate and get into this extremely long cuffing season, or were you just out there kind of fuck it,
Hey,
how about you folks, Drew and Shelli?
I want to say I dated the same. It definitely looks different, but I dated a lot. I mean, I date a lot, and so like pre-COVID, I was dating a lot, and then during COVID, I continued to date a lot, even though it looks so drastically different. And I think it feels like I dated more because of the energy that it took to date during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I want to say that I'm kind of on the same wavelength. I love dating and I date a lot too. And I dated a lot through the pandemic, but it looked different. You feel me? Like it wasn't me like going out to meet people at different places and stuff like that, going to a bar and hanging out. It was a lot of like the virtual world that we lived in. And a little bit of it would go into the real world when it came into like, and this is last summer though, you know, like restaurants and stuff weren't opening up yet. So it was a lot of like park stuff and things like that. But yeah, I dated about the same. It just looked different than it does.
It,
Than
it felt it felt kind of like being in high school again, right? Like you couldn't go to bars at night. So there was a lot of like buying takeout and eating on benches
Wasn't having
at
sex. Yeah,
parks.
definitely like high school.
I
No.
did not date at all during high school, so it is completely not like high school for me. But I mean, my high school was like sitting in a Walmart parking lot with some girl that I loved until 3 in the morning, but didn't couldn't tell her I loved her. I'm from Michigan. That should tell you a lot.
Yeah, it's so true. I didn't date much in high school either, but it's what I imagined dating in high school would be sort
Absolutely,
of
Yeah.
yeah. Chinese takeout in the park, boba tea, romance.
like. I mean, it just navigating physical contact, right? I think what would have been just like, kissing became like totally, kind of raw dogging it in a way. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah. And what did did you have? Did you folks have different filters like for like, am I gonna kiss this person? Because like I would make out with half the bar pre-COVID time, and then
I mean,
then pandemic.
I already had a lot of like boundaries in place when I already had a lot of boundaries in place when I was dating anyway. And on the physical part of things, yeah, it was definitely more like I had some filters and stuff, but mainly for me, a lot of it became more my favorite word, communication. I already don't settle for bad communication like before COVID, and now or during COVID, like last year when it was first started, I settled for even less like bad communication because I was like, you're at the crib. You should be able to like talk to me. You should be able to like have some form of conversation with me. Like, I don't understand why. I mean, I understand why people wouldn't be able to talk and stuff like that, but I settled less for like settled even I didn't settle even more for bad communication during COVID. I just didn't vibe with it. I just couldn't. And I don't, like I said, I'm a hard person to impress when it comes to that anyway. So, yeah, so not many filters, just like more rigid ones of the ones I already had in place.
Yeah, and I was really, really cautious. So I didn't my thing was like I was open to meeting up with people, but only if they were willing to get tested and quarantine for 2 weeks. And some people weren't able to do that, which I was understanding of, and depending on the reasons for that, or I understand that people, like, I'm lucky that I have work that I could do from home, and not everyone has that. So it certainly was a thing where, like, if certain people like weren't able to, I was fine with that as long as they were willing to put in the effort to the extent that they could. And the fact is that people, like, when you're dating, are fickle. And meeting someone who was willing to put in who I both, like, I did a lot of virtual dates to get to like knowing whether I wanted to
Mm.
put in that time, and it lining up of like, I want to meet this person and put in that time and take that risk, and they also want to and are willing to, like, you know work with sort of my strict rules. It didn't really happen that much. So I um in October I met one person who I'd been talking to since May, and it was because my roommates were out of town for the month. And so I felt like, well, I'm only putting myself at risk. I'm not putting them at risk. And because this person wasn't able to, like, fully quarantine because her kids, like, still saw their dad. And so there was, like, a few factors. Like, she was being safe, but, like, it still was just like there were some factors that made it not totally quarantine, whatever. So, but I, like, and like, we kissed, and my thing was like, once you're in my home, like, I don't the difference between like, I sort of was like, I wasn't going to invite anyone over if I wasn't like, okay, I'm now like choosing to open my bubble up to you for this period of time or whatever. So that happened. And then the only other physical contact I had and still have had since the pandemic started was like I hooked up with my roommates a couple times. But other than that, like
wait.
like,
You gotta lead with that story.
Yeah. I mean, like, look, you spend a lot of time with people, like they're like close friends, like some boundaries get blurred and things happen. And that's when communication is really important. But like, but yeah, I really like wasn't taking risks to see people who I was dating a lot, but a lot of it stayed with like, I've never met those people.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, note to self, get roommates, I guess.
No, I wouldn't recommend. That is not advice that I'm giving. That is not advice I'm giving.
Here are the tips we're giving out today.
Like,
free tips.
Fuck your roommates.
Get hot roommates.
Don't do that.
And then Gemini season. It's all good. At the end of Gemini season, you just say, hey, that was messy.
Gemini season.
It was Gemini season. Yeah.
Look, that's not. If you know what you're getting into, I do think there are things that are on paper not good ideas that can be fine as long as there's so much communication and if you're willing to put in the effort of that communication, which eventually, like, the reason why it only happened twice was because it just became too much, like it just was, so like it just was like, it's not worth the, like, let's just go back to, whatever. So so it's not official advice,
Teresa,
but it
definitely
is possible.
Teresa's roommate is her sister, so yeah, that doesn't work. So so that's interesting. Did any of you pick up kind of habits, weird or otherwise, that you want to continue now coming out of COVID? And question for the chat as well.
I love voice memos. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yes. Oh my God, I was gonna say the same thing. Let me hear your voice.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I'm a super like auditory person anyway, and I don't text a lot, but I love, even before COVID, I was still like, let me just send you a voice note or something like that. It ups the level of attractiveness to me. And so now what I've been doing is just being like, and I don't give out my phone number like straight away. So it'll be like, just send me a voice note on IG. I'm very much so like sticking to socials until I feel like you're interesting enough for me to like give you quicker access to me, which is through text message, because my read receipts are on. And the last thing I need is for somebody to be like, oh my God, you read it 2 days ago, but you didn't respond. It's like, relax. But anyway, I love voice notes. I think that's something that just like adds a cute little layer. And also it's really good when you do meet in person. It's something to talk about. It's being like, oh my gosh, like your voice sounds different, or your voice matches your personality even more, or something like that. Other than that, things that I've that I have like put in place a little bit more that people seem more receptive to is like screenshotting me some form of like testing stuff. You feel me? Like being like, oh, we're gonna hook up. Why don't you screenshot me this? Or like, show me your Vax card, or show me that you like have an appointment coming up for it. That kind of stuff. People are seeming to be a little bit more receptive to, when before people are like, this feels kind of invasive, even though it's really not. And especially for queer women, it seems to be a lot more. Before, people were like, this seems weird, but I know a lot of my queer like cis male friends that I would hang out with, they are very used to the exchanging of testing information. So a lot of women wouldn't respond really well before when I would ask for it, and now it feels like some people are a lot more receptive to it, because that's something I definitely have been doing and I need it. So
yeah, that's super interesting about kind of it is in a way like an STI, right? Without the S, it's a transmitted infection, right?
And it also doesn't have to be a big thing, I think. And it's not something I'm like, I enter into the conversation very like, okay, so we're going to talk about next is this. It doesn't flow like that. It's very simple, just being like, yo, have you been like vaxxed? You planning on getting vaxxed? You got an appointment for it? And just like send me a little bit of proof, you know what I'm saying? And if that person kind of responds in a negative way, or they kind of don't want to, I don't push it, because I'm not about to do all that work. I just kind of like, I end it right there and move on to the next person. I'm very blunt.
Yeah.
I don't have time for stuff.
Shelli's an amazing, like, cut it out of your life, you know, if it's not serving you. And
No time.
the audio notes is super interesting. I think I've shared before that I have a voice thing. So like one of my biggest fears going on a first date is you have all this rapport texting, and then like I don't like their voice, you
You
know?
sound like Minnie Mouse or Elmer Fudd or something, like, which is in
Yeah,
my
yeah.
lane. May work for some people, but yeah. And then you have to sit there for the whole date being like, oh, I hate your voice. I don't want you to talk.
I just think you can learn a lot about people with how they present themselves, like via video or audio. Like it is just this other layer. I will say that like so many of the things that I started doing in COVID, though, I feel so tired of. Like the idea of going out and like casually meeting someone and not having any not having any of the like pre judging or pre like screening like is so tempting to me right now. Like I mean it's still not, we're not there yet in my opinion, or at least with my comfort levels. Like I actually went to a restaurant for the first time yesterday, outside, like, you know, totally whatever, and I still like that was the first time. So I'm not at a place where like I'm meeting strangers at bars, but I'm excited for that. And I'm even excited to have like friends of friends, of like if a friend who I trust and who I trust their circle like has a house party, like I would feel comfortable going to that.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited to have that back, because as much as it's been really, I think I've learned a lot about sort of what this like year plus for me was a really great learning experience as far as being true to my desires, both in who I want to be with and also like what I want to be doing with people, romantically, sexually, etc. And so I feel like I now have that information that I learned from this sort of like more virtual, more like slow burn, getting to know people thing. And now I can bring that into like a life that maybe looks a little bit more like it used to. That's really tempting to me, because I think for me like surprise is like something, especially when it comes to just like random hookups like that, I really enjoy. And so because I can get so anxious, so I can get like I think I can get fixated on the pre-planning, whereas if I'm just somewhere and I meet someone, then I'm just like having a conversation and communicating with someone and getting to know them, and like that can be so appealing to me.
Yeah, it's interesting. We had a really interesting prep call earlier this week, the three of us, and you know, one thing that we were talking about is just like getting comfortable kicking it alone, so that you know you're not making decisions to fill the space, and be more thoughtful about you know how, and intentional about how you fill the space. And it's actually something I struggle with, that I think you know it's a combination of being really super extroverted and just kind of thirsty sometimes, you know. And you know, maybe you two could share like practical tips, right? Like if people are feeling lonely and you know you start to like not set proper boundaries and enforce them, you know, what are ways that you can kind of build that up for yourself?
Yeah, because my thing is like, if you can't spend time alone with yourself, I kind of feel like, how do you expect somebody to want to like spend time with you? You know what I'm saying? Like if you don't even like being with you, and if you don't like kicking it with you on like that sort of level of being like, I like my own company, I dig this, I don't mind, I like being alone, and seeing somebody you're dating or going on a date with as in like addition to that is so much better than going into something and being like, I'm seeking all this, I'm seeking for them to fulfill like this whole big bubble or this whole big thing for me. It's just seeing that kind of, seeing dates and like hooking up and all that stuff as an addition to your own solo life, as opposed to like, and plus it's a lot of pressure on the other person or other people that you're hanging out with, being like, I need you to fulfill and tick all these boxes, even if it's for like this 6 hour date. You know what I'm saying? Like that's so much, and it's so much to put pressure on somebody else. You're not going to have a good time when you need to just like learn to kick it with yourself, learn to be by yourself, be cool with that. And then it makes it easier when it's time to go on dates and time to go out and time to hook up, you know, like you have to be comfortable alone. And just because you're alone doesn't, I want people to get to the point where just because you're alone, it doesn't mean that you're lonely. You feel me? Like those are two different kind of vibes. I'm alone by myself all the time and I love it, mainly because I'm amazing, but also that doesn't mean that I'm like alone. I'm lonely. And when I am, I think I picked up the ways, like you said, being thirsty. When I am, I think it's because I'm so comfortable being by myself that when I am thirsty, it's easier for me to find the right type of company that I'm looking for to fulfill that sort of loneliness. That sounds so trite, being like, learn to be by yourself first. But so much of dating and shit and like relationships is a lot of like trite stuff that, yeah, it may sound lame, but like it is probably advice you should be following. Not everything's going to be sexy and like all super appealing. Some of it's really fucking lame, but it's really fucking good at the same time. So everything's not exciting. Like, chill.
Yeah, and I will say that, like, look, I mean, that's all, I agree with that all, and I think that's really important. And I also, as someone who maybe does get lonelier, something that Shelli and I were talking about in our like planning session that is just, I think, an important or helpful thing for myself is the idea of like having, I don't know, what were we calling it? Like a late night Instagram
late
flirt?
night IG crush.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where
IG
while I'm like dating and looking for someone who maybe I would have like a more of a connection with, like it is nice to have people who are just like mutuals on social media who, like, you know, we flirt every now and again, and like who live all over, and where it's like doesn't maybe feel super real, or maybe it's not someone who you think you would want to like actually date seriously, but it's just like nice to have like a little bit of a flirtation, because like I get bored really easily, and it's really nice to have that. So instead of like late at night swiping right on someone I don't want to swipe, I should be swiping right on, and then like hooking up with them or whatever, and it being a mistake, like scratching the itch a little bit by just being like, well, I have this person to like flirt with. And then sometimes those things do turn into the thing that actually matters to you. Like that's where I'm at right now, is that like the person who I'm like sort of dating, and I say sort of because like she lives in Toronto and the border's closed, and so it's like we've never met, but it did get to this point where it was like a year of like late night like casual like flirting every now and again, and then at a certain point like it just got more intimate, and I was like, oh wait, this like person who I didn't think of because of the distance as like a viable person, now I'm like crushing hard. So like you never know. But also the reason why I could approach it in that way, that was more casual, is because I wasn't like, oh my god, this person is like going to be the answer to all my loneliness and all my problems. It was like, this person is a fun person to flirt with, and like, you know, among other people. And then like it just has moved in this direction. And also if like it doesn't work out, because again we have not met, it's like I'll be okay. I'll be disappointed, but I'll be okay, because one, I think I've done a lot of work to like what Shelli was talking about, to like be okay being alone. And two, because I have like a lot more other like late night Instagram flirt people who will just like hold me over until the time is right. And it's not about being dishonest or about like, you know, I mean, I'm also like non-monogamous and talk about that, and I'm open about that. And then also like, I'm not, when I say like I'm flirting with these people, like I'm not promising anything. Like it is like a fun flirty friendship. It's not like I'm telling people that I love them and then like being like, haha, but I have like 6 more of you and I'm not telling you about any of it. Like it's all like very above board and communicative, but it is just nice to have like people to like tell them they're hot, and they tell you you're hot. Like that's great.
Yeah. And I think what that last thing you said about it that's really, really good is like y'all being on the same page. Like find, when you have those late night flirting sessions, or find that late night flirt person, or not even late night, that person like that you're flirting with, like, because sometimes it could be like middle of the afternoon on a Wednesday. Absolutely. And I'm like, oh my god, someone call me pretty, like that kind of stuff. Like, but just making sure that the both of y'all are consistently on the same page, knowing what you're doing for each other. So that way no one gets like hurt. You feel me? That kind of thing. And if it does evolve, it's good because y'all are evolving on the same page together for the same purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm in search of late night IG crushes. Just throw it out there to the universe, the Gemini
I was
universe.
gonna be like, does that mean that your DMs are open and you're looking for a little flirty flirt? That's
DMs
what it
are
sounds like to
open.
me.
We'll see what happens. And Shelli, you had said something during that prep session that was really interesting about how people don't have to be big texters. Like I'm big into texting actually, and I always feel bad about like trying not to be overwhelming. But you also you differentiated between being not being a big texter and not being a good communicator. Like, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's not the same thing. Like, someone cannot give you, like, if someone's like, oh, I'm not responding to something, whatever, like, you can be a bad texter and still be a good communicator. Like, you cannot use that as an excuse for communicating poorly. You cannot do that. Like, you cannot be like, I don't text, and then like I'm supposed to be like, oh, that's the reason they didn't respond about this date, or that's the reason why they haven't like sent me more information about themselves. Like, that's not a thing, and that's settling for that response, and that's not cool. Like, and I wanted to say too about like, that's just your form of communication. You feel me? Like, that's a form of communication that you love. Is like, you like texting, you're a big texter, and then you were like you were saying about like, you don't want to come off as overwhelming. And I was telling you, I think before, like, a solve for that is just saying that when you meet somebody, be like, yo, I'm a big texter, are you like into that kind of stuff? Because it gives them the opportunity. You have to give people the opportunity to tell them about, wait, you have to give people the opportunity to tell you about themselves, but you can't expect them to just like expose that without you giving them a prompt. So I think a solve for that is being like it's okay that you're a big texter. It's so me and you, it would not work because I am not a texter. And you have to give that person an opportunity, like, yo, I'm a big texter, are you into it? And be like, no. And that way you're aware and you're not like blindsided by it, and you could like bring it up. But you can also find a happy medium and be like, I don't text. Like, all right, well, do you voice note? Do you talk on the phone? Are you a FaceTimer? You know what I'm saying? It's all about that kind of compromise, which is like not my favorite thing, but like that's why I'm not in a relationship, you know. But I'm a great dater because I don't have to compromise with everybody all the time. But finding that level of compromise and communication also leads to a really good like dating life, you know, like so. But I just don't want people to accept excuses that are so whack about being a bad communicator. Like, you have to people have to communicate. And I always see this in so many things whenever I talk about dating, whenever I talk about relationships, whenever I talk about all this kind of stuff and do these panels. You have to talk to each other in some kind of way. Saying that you're a bad communicator is also you communicating. You know what I'm saying? Like, that kind of stuff is real. And if people don't talk to each other, then you can't expect to like have a good dating or relationship experience. Like, it's just not, it's not. And if you're not a person that's like, you're shy, or you're like, you think you're scared to approach people, all that kind of stuff, some of that stuff you're going to have to work out by being by yourself and figuring out better ways for you to like expand that about yourself so that you can go out and have these great dates and these great relationships. All of it goes back to learning about yourself and being okay with the shit about yourself that you find out. So yeah.
Well, and things don't have to be comfortable, right? Like, you don't have to
Word.
think you can be like, I know that this is a conversation that would help me to have, and so I'm going to have this conversation. You can be nervous about it. Like, you can feel uncomfortable about it, especially if you're not used to having those kinds of like direct communication with people. Like, it's going to take time before it feels comfortable, and that's part of it. Like, you don't have to feel embarrassed if you don't always say something right, or like don't like, I don't know. I think that sometimes, like, you know, if someone likes you, it's like they're gonna probably think it's adorable, you know, like it's get like you have so
Yeah.
much like room to play with as far as just like, and you can even say that you're nervous about talking about something. Like these are all like options as far as getting to a place where you can be clear about what you want. And you can also take, like, depending on what the thing is and what the like direct communication is, you can take your time with it. But at the end of the day, if you're finding that you're in like long drawn out things that don't have a lot of clarity and you don't know how someone feels about you, like it's just about when that stops being fun. Like sometimes that's fun to me. Sometimes there are people where I don't want to have any sort of like set thing. Like some of those like late night Instagram crushes of like, I don't want to like know where we're at. And that's fine. But if you're frustrated with like with feeling stuck and feeling like you don't that things aren't moving where you want them to move, like you have to move towards communication. Like it's not just going to happen for you. So I think that's the challenge, is being honest with yourself about when something is like being drawn out because it's fun and you're taking your time and you're figuring out what you want, and when something is being drawn out because you're scared and you don't know how to communicate. And then you should push yourself to do those things even if it feels uncomfortable. We date so many people. We can date so many people. Like if something doesn't work out with someone, if you embarrass yourself, if you like do whatever, like it's, as long as you're like being respectful, like you're fine. Like, you know, like okay, then like where are you, like you're, then you move on to the next person. Like it's like the stakes aren't as high as they feel, but I get them feeling high. Like I do, like I'm a very anxious person. I very much understand how it feels like to be direct in that way can feel so scary. But it's not, but if you like actually like think about it and really try to like live in the reality of it, like in a month you won't remember, probably.
And I do want to
Yeah.
say too that like I think people have to, and I hope people learn this in COVID or through like quarantine and stuff like that, the difference between dating and like a relationship. Those are two different things. And a
Mhm.
lot of people are
Mm.
like, oh my gosh, I'm dating someone, da da da. It's like, you're dating someone, that means you're dating, you're hanging out with one person. You can hang out with several people. It's not as though, and I think that's where a lot of the pressure comes from. A lot of people are like, oh my God, I'm in this relationship with this person. No, you are not. You're hanging out with this person. You can hang out with several people. And if you've communicated that and pushed yourself to do that out of your comfort zone and be like, ask the question, are you seeing a bunch of other people? Because I'm seeing a bunch of other people. And that way people will be on the same page about it. But I think through COVID, I think a lot of people have been like, oh my God, I'm in this relationship with this person who I just met on this app like 2 weeks ago and I don't know how to end it. The person probably doesn't think that you're in a relationship. That person probably just thinks that you're one of the several people that they're dating and talking to. So I hope that through COVID as well, people have learned to differentiate between the two. And if they can't, I hope that they've like built up the type of communication where they can ask that person that question, what is this? Saying what is this is not a scary thing. It doesn't mean like every what is this isn't going to be followed with like, so this is a relationship. But if you are confused about something and you don't want to be confused and you want to know where your stance is in something with someone, you have to ask them. You have to talk to people and so that you know where you're standing. There's nothing worse in dating than not knowing where you stand with somebody. It's like one of the worst things in the world because you're talking to and both of you are probably talking to everybody else about it. You're probably asking your friends, screenshotting them the text messages, like, oh my God, where do I stand with this person? When you could literally just ask the person. You feel me? And that way you stop wasting so much time with people. Because if you're in something with someone and they think it's something else or they want out of it and you want it out of it, but neither one of you have been able to tell each other you're out of it, you're wasting time and you're wasting hooking up with somebody else. You feel me? Like, talk to people. I'm so sorry. Y'all have to start talking to people. And like, just like Drew said, I didn't want to say it because I know I come from a different standpoint about dating. I'm not thinking it's like so easy, but I don't think it has to be that hard. when she said pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone for stuff, sometimes you're just going to have to do that. Like, that dating is going to be uncomfortable sometimes, and you're just going to have to like push through that shit. Like, so please keep talking to each other. Sorry.
And I saw in the chat someone said that like they were direct and the person reacted negatively. And that's the hard thing, right? Is that like any relationship, like when you're dating, it requires both people to communicate, right? And so you can communicate well and push towards good communication. And if the person is really resistant to that, then there's really nothing you can do. And that just means that they're maybe not ready to be dating you or be dating in a way that is the way you want to. And like, and that is fine. And then you're just like not a good match, and that's fine. I mean, it because that is the challenging thing, right? Like you get the courage to like vocalize some of these things, and then they're not honest with you, or they don't know what they want, or whatever it is, or they like don't want to talk about it and whatever. Like you are going to find that, but I think finding that and then being like, cool, so this person, like making the choice that not only are you going to communicate, but you are going to be a person who dates people who communicate. And that doesn't mean they have to do it perfectly. That doesn't mean they can't like be uncomfortable and like work through it and get there. But if they're totally shut down to that, then they need to work it out. Like you can't control that.
Yeah, I think it goes back to kind of the being comfortable with being alone, so that you're not making all these exceptions or settling because you're okay with that person going away because you know there's other people, or even if there's not other people immediately, that's okay too.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of touches on a topic that's everyone's favorite thing to hate, which is ghosting.
Oh, I was so nervous. I was like, where is this going? I was gonna be like, oh, off camera, sorry, bye. Okay, but ghosting, go ahead.
Ghosting, right? How do you address it? Like, do you just kind of let it go? And you know, about Shelli mentioned like taking screenshots, and I've been sending Shelli all of these screenshots from like multiple people and stuff, and it's so true, right? It could have just been solved. Yeah, it's been going really well. Yeah, I'm pretty proud of it. And it's literally like communication and just being like, and then being okay, blocking. That's one of the,
Baby, block the block button or on your phone or whatever. It is my favorite thing in the world because like Drew was saying earlier, like, you know, the person in the chat was saying like, I said this to this person and they reacted badly, You're saying something to someone and them like not feeling it is not a reason for you to sit there and take them like talking down to you or being like rude to you or something like that just because you said how you felt about something. Same thing goes for ghosting. So someone also said define ghosting. Ghosting is basically when you just stop talking to somebody because for me, ghosting is basically not talking to someone because you stop talking to somebody because you're scared of their reaction. So you kind of just disappear. You stop responding to any form of communication. They text you, you don't respond. I guess I'm speaking from the ghoster perspective. They text you, you don't respond. They call, you don't respond. It's basically when you stop responding to anything. And that's bullshit. Because two things, you can use the block button. But anyway, so here's how I feel about it. So I'm going to go with the thing that someone said is 8 hours for a reply in the dating scene, a good reason to ghost them. All of that kind of stuff, there's always factors around that. I always feel like if you've done your part in communicating, if you've done your part in saying, I want to see you at this time, or is that okay with you? Or when you've been sending them questions about themselves, what's your favorite color? Like, oh, what are you watching tonight? Or what kind of food you're into? And they are just constantly not responding. I don't think that you should just be like, oh, I'm just going to block them straight away. I think you should take it as a moment to build your own boundaries and also learn to start communicating. So what I would suggest doing, if this person hasn't responded to you in 8 hours and you've done everything, and you got to be honest with yourself. And if you've honestly sent them messages, you've honestly tried to reach out, you've honestly tried to do all this kind of stuff, I think you should use this as a moment to be like, hey, I've reached out to you a few times. I actually don't like the way that you didn't respond, and it's kind of upsetting me. So it would have been nice to get to keep getting to know you, but I'm going to go ahead and call this a wrap. And then you block them, because if you don't block them, two things are going to happen. They're going to either come back at you super negative and be like, well, fuck you, you're terrible, like you're kind of OC, this was wild. Or they're going to be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I definitely do want to meet up. And both of those things suck, because it shouldn't have taken you leaving to get somebody to stay or to like show their interest. Like, you're worth more than that. And then the other one is like, you don't get to yell at me because I've tried my hardest. You were, if you've been honest, like, you don't get to yell at me and be shitty to me because I was honest about how I felt, that this ghosting made me feel after I've literally tried to communicate with you. You know what I'm saying? You don't deserve either of those things, but you do deserve to build up boundaries in your own communication. So send that message and block them. You feel me? There are more other people. And then from that point, now you know 8 hours is too much for me. If I don't hear from you in 8 hours, I'm just done. You get what I'm saying? You learn to build boundaries and all that kind of shit. So ghosting is it sucks. And I really encourage you, if you are a ghoster, maybe you have your own reasonings behind it, but it is still COVID and it is still a pandemic. And you cannot be out here wasting people's time in the dating pool. Like, people can just go outside and go find another date like that. Like, that's not fair. This is not the same world that we were in before. So if you're a ghoster, and I think you need to look at yourself and learn how to communicate. But yeah, that's it. And also get to know the block button on everything, on your phone, on Instagram, on Twitter. It's literally the greatest thing in the world. So yeah, that's my
I would
spiel.
also say that in defining ghosting, that I do think it's important to distinguish between, like, when I think about ghosting, I think about if you've established some sort of relationship with the person. You don't have to be dating, but like you got like some form of, like, you've met them, or you've met them virtually if that's all that's available to you. Like, I think that here's the thing. For me, I love to be clear and communicate. And I think that, so if I'm having a conversation on Bumble with someone, not always, but a lot of times, if I've had like a actual conversation, if they messaged like hi and I said like whatever, and they are like not giving me a lot, then sometimes I'll disappear because I'm like, I don't have time for that. But if we've had like a conversation, I will, and I'm no longer, and I don't want to have a second conversation, I will say like, hey, and I will explain why. Maybe it'll be the truth. Maybe it will be like a nicer version of the truth or whatever. But I will do that. I don't think I have to. I don't think people have to. I think that if you've only had like a conversation on a dating app, they don't really owe you anything. I don't think that's ghosting. And I think that people will be a lot less hurt if you don't think of that as ghosting, and you don't think,
Yeah.
if you haven't established anything with someone, like them, look, you can be excited about someone on a dating app, but you don't know them. So like, I think lowering sort of the expectations around that is healthy for everyone involved. I like to give a little bit of something, just because, like, look, I know what it's like to have like a really good conversation on a dating app and be excited about someone, and then they disappear, and it feels shitty. And like, it takes like maybe a week to be like, I guess they're really not going to get back to me. And like, to just be able to save someone that week and give them just the immediate like disappointment, I do think is like kind thing to do, but I don't think it's necessary. And as far as like actual ghosting goes, it is the ghoster, right? Like, that is something that I think can help deal with when you are the person who has been ghosted, to remember that, like, if someone is ghosting, that means that they are not at a place in themselves and in their own like ability to communicate, to express how they feel to you, which means that there's a really, really good chance that it has nothing to do with you. And
Nothing.
and like, it can still be disappointing, it can still hurt, especially if you've spent like, I mean, you hear crazy ghosting stories of like people who were like in full-on relationships for years and then someone just disappears. I'm talking more the like middle ground of maybe like you've been on a few dates, or like you've hooked up once or whatever. It sucks, but it is, in my experience, it is never about you. It's about them and the stuff that they're not ready to deal with, as far as dating, as far as intimacy. And it'd be great if people could communicate that and be like, hey, I can't deal with this. But some people can't. And yeah, you deal with the disappointment and you try to move on. And in some ways you can think of it as like well, if that's how they communicate while dating, like they weren't going to communicate better in a relationship. So you don't want to be dating that person anyways. Like when people hurt us that early on, it honestly is just, I get how it can sometimes feel really like I like was joking that I was like the queen of the non-relationship breakup of just like, or like non-relationship heartbreak of like being like, we weren't dating, but my heart's broken because like I really wanted us to be dating. And when I'm actually in a relationship, and we break up, there's always a little bit of me that feels like, oh, I'm free. And so like, but with stuff that's just promising, it can feel so disappointing when you're like, no, but I had this whole story in my head that you were going to be my next serious partner. And like, we were going to go on this, we were going to do that together. We were going to, and you have these whole like narratives, and those narratives are very, very attractive and can be really hard to part with, but they were just fantasies. They weren't real. And I think it's important to remember that, and remember that even if you've like been dating, even if you're like in a relationship with someone for a month, you don't really know that person. Like I mean, you might know, aspects of them and you're getting to know them, and that's really exciting and amazing and the best. But like, I think it's really helpful to remember that so much in the early stages of a relationship or the early stages of dating, so much of that is projection. And so much of that is like, you want to talk about self-love, like you're just like falling in love with your own fantasy. And then as you get to know someone, the like your fantasy of them and who they are, like, starts to come together, and you really get to know who they are. But like, so much of it's projection. So if that can help be like, well, you can just take that little narrative and plop it onto somebody else you meet pretty soon, like.
I also think, I do want to clarify, like, super quick, like, Drew's absolutely right. I guess the type of ghosting I'm talking about is if you've had like a few conversations, or if you've been on dates and stuff like that. But it's absolutely right. Like, if you are just on a dating app and both of you have said, hey, and maybe like exchange like 2 sentences, they don't owe you a reason to be like, it would be nice, but they don't owe you. That's not something where you like are owed the sort of like, okay, so this is why I'm gonna head out. But so I'm talking about a little bit like further, something that's had a little bit more of an exchange, you feel me? That kind of stuff, they do owe you. Can I answer a question that I saw in the chat really quick?
Yeah, go for it, Shelli.
Are you about to talk about the romantic energy versus
yes? I actually wanted to combine a couple questions that we had for our kind of last questions. So there's this kind of there's a couple questions around telling the difference between romantic and friend energy, and I think it's kind of related to how do you like move things forward or find out, and I always like this concept of social topping, where you kind of shoot your shot, and it's another form of communication, right? So kind of threading together a few of those questions, like one example is that you're in a situation, women are just bonding all the time in different ways. And so how do you tell the difference between friends and more? And then if you want to know, how do you actually move it forward? If you want it to be more romantic, how do you find out, or how do you kind of shoot your shot?
Can I go first? Because everyone literally knows what I'm going to say. I am telling y'all, so much of this is, okay, precursor. I think that we have to get away from everything needing to be so cute, or so like, I need to find a cute way to ask this person this, or I need to find a cool way to ask this person this, when you can just ask them. You feel me? Like, I think things are a little bit different right now after COVID, because we haven't been around people in so long. So all the energy, like the literal energy you get off of people when you're in, like, maybe y'all have a first like brunch, for your first brunch you've been to in a year, and people have invited others, or like a house party kind of thing. there's going to be so many different types of energy that it's going to be hard to read, because some people are just going to be like, oh my God, I'm just happy to be around people. So I'm more talkative. I'm more like engaging, that kind of stuff. So that's like one kind of thing. You feel me? But just because we haven't been around people consistently in the past year and a half doesn't mean that it's going to be extra harder to pick up on certain social cues. You feel me? Like certain little things you should be able to be like, this person literally just thinks we're friends, or this person is not giving me like romantic, let's hook up energy. You know what I'm saying? But on the other side of things, like differentiating between romantic energy and friendship energy, if you're in a friendship with someone and you are starting to feel some kind of way and you thinking you're getting all these hints and stuff like that, but you're confused about it, I told you earlier, one of the worst things in any relationship, honestly, friendship, family, sexual, whatever, is being confused, like, or wondering, kind of just like wondering. There's a difference between wondering and wonderment, but being like wondering about shit is so, I've been cussing a lot. I just realized that I have a potty mouth. But it sucks. So you just have to ask and it's gonna be weird as fuck, right? Because if you are feeling something with somebody who you've been friends with for a year and you're starting to get romantic feelings for, you're gonna have to take the risk. Either you continue to do this to yourself, where you are sitting there every time you hang out and you're like, oh my God, I wonder if they like me. Or you can keep doing that to yourself, but be honest about the fact that you chose to keep doing that to yourself. Or you can take the risk and be like, yo, I'm feeling a certain kind of way. I'm really nervous about talking to you about this, but I want to know, do you feel anything romantic towards me? Because I'm starting to feel that way towards you, and I feel like that energy is here. And it's going to be it might be really awkward. It might not, but you either have to continue to do this something to yourself or find a solve for it. And the solve is just to ask. Like, a lot of the times we do this stuff to ourselves. So much of dating is ourself and not the other person, like at the start of it anyway. So if you're wondering, or even if you are, because I guess there's two ways to look at this, right? I'm almost finished. I'm almost off my soapbox. Give me a second. But there's two ways to look at this too, right? Because what if you're the person who is picking up the romantic energy, but you don't want it? You know what I'm saying? That person also has to make a decision. Am I gonna like maybe ruin this friendship and be like, I don't want to deal with that? Or am I gonna like sit in this every time we hang out? Like, y'all have to just start talking to each other. It doesn't have to be, everything doesn't have to be cute. Everything doesn't have to be long. You could just be like, I kind of like you, and this is why I'm feeling it. How do you feel about it? And realize that you might not speak to that person ever again, or the next few times you do, it's gonna be fucking weird. But like, that's a decision you're gonna have to make. Y'all gotta step up and just start talking to each other. Like, you just have to. It's gonna be weird. But y'all are probably wasting so much time and so much energy in all of these friendships and all this stuff like that, that you just don't have to. So, and I don't want anybody to think that I just came out like this. This is something like I had to do too. And it fucking sucked. It was so uncomfortable. But now the type of people who are in my life, the way that I date, the type of shit I won't take when dating is so much better because I went through that uncomfortable shit. Like, okay, I'm finished. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I'm done.
I mean, I
Shelli,
think
you
the
should,
reason. Whoa,
you should absolutely do a TED Talk. That's what I was gonna say.
It would just be me yelling at people and being like, "Oh my God, fucking talk to each other.
Communicate.
Like, communicate. Thank you for your $75 to my ticket to tell you to fucking talk." All right, I'm
Communicate,
sorry.
then block.
That's it.
look,
I wish I could help everybody. Go ahead, Drew. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. The reason why that's true though is because like one person's flirting with a purpose and one person's flirting just because of whatever are so different. So like I do think, look, you can pick up on cues. I think that's great. I think it's really important to like try to do that. But also like everyone's cues are different. So it like the only way to know is to actually talk about it. And like I'm someone who doesn't have, I used to say that I used to like be like I don't have great boundaries between friends and like sexual partners, but I actually don't think it needs to be framed in like a negative. I think that I just like when I like a person, generally speaking, whether that manifests in a platonic friendship, a sexual friendship, or a romantic relationship, I don't really know yet. And I don't really feel super invested in what way. I mean, there are people who are, I don't know. Anyways, for the most part, that's the case. And so, what I usually do is I just say to someone, like, I usually just say that. That's like what I say now. I say, like, look, like, like, it's been so great getting to know you and be friends with you. And when I like a person, that's like, I'm like, I don't really feel invested one way or the other. But I also do think you're really hot. And I sort of I have a crush on you. And like, what do you feel about that? And like, then you just like talk about it. And I have made, like, so many of my friends are people who I started off dating. That is like so many of my friends. And that can mean started off dating in the sense that we were like flirting and I was like, is this a date? Is this a date? And then said that and they were like, no, it's not. Or it was a date and then we transitioned it into friendship. And I think like at each of those stages though, the reason why those people are still in my life is because we talked about it. And like even the friends where maybe we did that transition without talking about it, eventually we had to. Like I have like a friend who like, you know, it started off flirty, it was like a little bit complicated and then it just sort of got weird and I just like, then we just became friends. And eventually like we had to unpack that. And I mean, that can take the time it takes, but I do think that was important. And just generally speaking, I just, yeah, I agree with Shelli. Like just, you gotta talk about it and you can do that in your own time. But like Shelli said, like know that if you are not, like there was someone who for a lot of the pandemic, I wasn't asking whether we were friends or dating because I was like, they lived in a different state. And I was like, wouldn't really change that much. So it doesn't really matter right now. And we can just continue to get close. And then we eventually got to a place where it was feeling a little bit like, I want clarity. I want to know. And so I just kept checking in with myself. And then I asked, and then we had a great conversation about it. And like, and now like, she's one of my closest friends. And, you know, and like, what a gift to have a close friend. Like, you know, like it's also the idea that a friend is somehow worse than, like if someone says, I just want to be your friend and genuinely means it, not like an excuse of like, can we just be friends? And then I'm going to disappear because I don't actually like you. I mean, like genuinely someone wants to be your friend. Like that's incredible. Like if you're hooking up with someone, like that might last like, a very brief period of time. If you're friends with someone and really form a connection with someone, like that's
wild.
What a gift.
Yeah,
that's so nice.
That's a great point. Thank you, Shelli and Drew. Just so much truth bombs here. And if I were to summarize what I took away, it's get comfortable kicking it with yourself and communicate, then block and and get comfortable with discomfort, right? That things about dating's not always sexy and fun, and that's okay. That's actually part of it. So yeah, we really love getting together in our queer community, in our queer community. Huge shout out to Oxy Skincare for hosting us and sponsoring us.